Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be heading to the backwoods of Indiana for our full in-depth review on the legend at Holiday World. That's right, this Hallows Eve we're going to be dancing with the Headless Horseman as we find out everything that this crazy wooden coaster has to offer. So let's hop on our horse and find out some stats. The legend first opened on May 6th, 2000 at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. It boasts a top height of 99 feet and a drop of 113 feet, getting you all the way up to the speed of 59 miles per hour. As you're traveling that fast, you'll go through a full track length of 4,042 feet in a full duration of 2 minutes flat. This ride does not feature any inversions, as it is more of a traditional wooden coaster made by Custom Coasters International, but I can tell you it is just as exciting, if not more exciting, than the things that bring you upside down. So let's try and find out how to get there. The legend, as well as every roller coaster at Holiday World, is kind of hard to find. The park layout itself is quite confusing, and it's filled with woods and plenty of hills that never end up getting you directly where you want to go. The absolute quickest way to get to this roller coaster, though, is once you enter through the front entrance of Holiday World and find yourself in Christmas Town. You'll want to take a left once you get to the ornament fountain. Follow that main path until you come across another fork in the road, make another left there, and you'll end up running into its sister coaster, the Raven. Pass by the Raven, pass by a little diving show area, and Goblin Burgers all will be on your left-hand side, and the legend will be hiding right behind a game booth. The entry point is just to the right-hand side of the station, which will take you down a set of stairs and bring you into the middle of the ride's final 4 turns. This area is filled with switchbacks and a tree, and I would keep in mind that these switchbacks are really narrow. Just barely enough space for one person across each, and that is something that goes with every single roller coaster at Holiday World, with the exception of Thunderbird. After traversing all of those switchbacks back and forth, you'll walk up a staircase into the station, which you'll encounter some more switchbacks there. At least in this station themed like a schoolhouse, even with the inclusion of a ringing bell, you're closer and closer to the ride itself as you mirror that final brake run. Eventually, you'll get dumped into the station platform itself. You'll get to choose your row, one of 12, and it'll just be about time to face the Headless Horseman face on. Before you do that, though, you gotta figure out how to sit down in your seat. So, go across the station platform, drop your bags and loose articles in the bins provided for free before taking your seat on these Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters trains. They're fairly beautiful looking as they've got a purple and orange color scheme throughout, of course harkening into that Hallows Eve theme, but they are quite box shaped. Thankfully, to make up for that, they do have some padded leather seating in there to hopefully accommodate more guests than not, as then you'll pull in a seat belt buckle and pull down a quick little lap bar that may push your legs together a little bit more than you might like, as this most generic coaster seat is ready to take you on a ride. To begin your chase on the legend, you'll get pushed out of that station as that school bell will ring above, which I think is such a cool little added effect. From this point on, you'll turn to the right and then head up that 99-foot tall lift hill. As the higher and higher you go, the more and more of the park you can see. As you're distracted with that beautiful view, however, you'll make it to the very top before twisting to the right again in a small dip and then plummeting 113 feet all the way towards the ground while you twist to the left. This drop is already pretty intense, but added on there is a tunnel at the very bottom, so even if you can see as much as possible, by the time you reach the bottom, it will be complete darkness. This drop gives some amazing airtime, especially if you're towards the back of the train, and a bunch of laterals no matter where you sit. And if you're curious on what laterals are, that just means you're being pushed side to side in your seat. This is probably a bit of a spoiler, but Legend, to me, is the king of these types of forces, and you'll see why pretty soon. Emerging from this tunnel, you'll still be turning left, getting more and more lateral forces as you go on before you end up flattening out into a right-handed turn. Now, this right-handed turn does not have nearly enough banking, so you'll figure out bits of what the rest of this ride entails, as this is one of the most sharp moments of those lateral forces on the entire ride. This is before ducking down underneath other parts of the structure, as well as underneath some cool water slides that inhibit Splash and Safari, the park's water park, as you twist back to the left, giving some more lateral forces before heading up another hill. At the top of this hill, there isn't really any airtime, but it's just giving you a little breather before the next element at hand. As this twisting downward helix toward the right-hand side just builds speed all the way to the bottom, as well as some laterals before it vaults back upward into a covered airtime hill. This is going to be the most straightforward moment of airtime on the entire coaster, which will lift you out of your seat no matter where you're sitting on the train. As you bump all the way down back to the ground, you'll then go up another hill underneath parts of the structure that you just passed through on the track. The top of this hill doesn't really give any airtime, but that's okay. Again, it's building to the next moment, which, especially if you're in the back row, you go down one of the steepest drops on the entire coaster. Not only that, though, you'll twist to the right just a bit and head into a tunnel, which gives another great hand and head chopper moment, pretty much making it feel like you're going to lose either your hand or head, kind of just like that Headless Horseman. But I will say this drop, especially in the back row, is the best moment of airtime on the entire ride. Of course, just like that first drop, you're still going to be turning, this time to the right-hand side, and oh boy, this is one of the most extended moments of lateral forces possible. You're being pushed towards the left for an extended period of time, I think over 3 or 4 seconds just for the one turn. This is all before you twist to the left, dive underneath more of the structure, and then twist back right. This is where the fun begins, as this next element on the Legend is a legend in its own right. It's not just one helix, it's not two, it is a triple version of the element. So that's great, you're probably saying. It lasts a long time, but wouldn't that get boring? No, not at all, especially because you're going in and out of tunnels underneath different parts of the roller coaster structure, and going up and down, and even potential airtime moments. This entire time you're getting shoved to the side. I remember the first time riding this roller coaster and looking over to my buddy Mario as we sat in the front row, and we went, man, this is awesome. Oh my goodness, it's still going. When is this going to end? And we ended up laughing the rest of the way through. Mind you, we were already asking that question only halfway through this triple helix. If you've been on Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm, which is just a little bit of an older version of this ride, at least in my mind, you know that finale helix is pretty dang forceful and lasts a very long time. Well, for perspective, put 2 of those in terms of duration, as well as some airtime hills and tunnels, and boy, you got the Legend's final helixes. And to me, it's just one of my favorite lateral moments on any coaster possible, if not one of my favorite elements ever, even potentially my favorite in the park. Eventually, you'll exit out of these helices as you hop up into a small airtime hill, which might give you a tiny bit of a floating sensation before you end up breaking the streak and turning to the left-hand side with not too many laterals and a little bit of an airtime hill immediately after. This is when the laterals come back into play as you sharply turn to the right 90 degrees before diving underneath the park's log flume in another tunnel section. Again, you'll face another 90-degree turn immediately after this to the left, diving down yet again before turning and twisting to the right 90 degrees twice more in a row. These 4 turns are known widely amongst the community as they are just 4 moments of ridiculous lateral forces shoving you to the the side. Nay, I say throwing you to the side on this roller coaster. They also completely surround that queue section, so you'll be able to get a great view of it barreling around these 4 turns, as well as hear it, as those side friction wheels on the roller coaster are known to squeal at this point, just before you slam into that final brake run and back into the station. From this point, you want to grab your belongings on the left-hand side, walk down that exit rampway, and you'll be out on the midway, safe from the Hessian soldier that haunts Sleepy Hollow. Are you going to dare to take him on again? Wrapping all of my thoughts on the Legend is going to be a very tough task, as the Legend was probably the biggest sleeper hit of my entire road trip in 2022. I have a couple of friends of mine, such as Analog Thrills, that always told me he preferred Legend to anything else at Holiday World, which, considering The Voyage, one of the best wooden coasters in the world is at the park, was a pretty big praise. But I could definitely say after riding it, I might actually agree with him. This ride is fairly dynamic, especially for a wooden coaster, as it twists and dives through multiple tunnels, head chopper moments, which is fairly fitting, and really plays into that twisting layout so incredibly well. Within the space that the Legend inhibits, there are so many obstacles that it could have run into, but somehow the magicians at CCI were able to put this thing together, bobbing and weaving throughout the many trees, slides, rides, and much more that this ride had to evade to make work. Of course, we've talked about the lateral forces quite a bit on this roller coaster, and it is definitely the staple of the ride. And I will say, me being from Southern California, there are not too many roller coasters that really give me that type of impression. Typically, it's going to have a lot of airtime or weightless moments, or it'll push you down into your seat with its crazy loops. But this ride was like, hey, how about we throw in some unbanked turns? Sound good? And I unsarcastically said, heck yes, please. The sparse moments of airtime are absolutely amazing. Of course, there aren't many positive G's, as many wooden coasters may become uncomfortable with that type of force, but I can even tell you, with it being a wooden coaster and for being as old as it is, thanks to the wonderful people at Holiday World, this thing is running smoother than ever, as they're constantly retracking and maintaining the ride. And I gotta be honest, even though it is a little rough around the edges with a lot of those lateral forces, it was still smoother than most wooden coasters I've been on. There isn't too much theming overall, but for what it does have, it does allude to the story enough to make you know exactly where you're at, and I really do love how it looms on the side of the hill, as you can only see most of this ride from the water park itself. So if you're only visiting the parks for the coasters, most of this layout is a complete mystery, even if you've seen POVs. I thought I knew the layout fairly well going into the ride, but man, once you go through that second tunnel, you have no idea where you're going. The Legend surprised me at every single corner, and I really did enjoy it for that. So with that said, let's get into my favorites and least favorites. Speaking on seats specifically, I gotta say, as much as I loved that front row ride, the back is definitely where to go, and probably my least favorite would be somewhere in the middle. Going over to elements now, my favorite definitely has to be that triple Helix. It's just unbelievable. But I will say my least favorite element on the ride is that double down immediately after. But this will push us laterally, of course, into my final ratings overall. If you've never seen one of these full in-depth reviews before, just know I have a bit of an unorthodox rating system. First, I'll let you know how experienced of a roller coaster rider you should be before checking out this roller coaster. Following that, I'll give a 5-star rating for fun and intensity, and then to wrap it all in a bow, I'll give my personal rating out of 10. So let's get rating. You should definitely be an experienced rider for the Legend. Although there's no inversions or crazy positive G's, it does have a lot of that wooden charm, or as many people would say, a little bit of the bumps and shakes. And that nearly 60-mile-per-hour top speed while dipping and diving and getting pushed to the side can be quite intense. Speaking of intensity, this is easily a 4 out of 5-star rating, especially at the park, as it is one of the most intense roller coasters there and rides, as it's dipping and diving directly underneath multiple objects, giving you some crazy sideways forces as well as a bit of airtime. This is pretty easily very intense. That leads us into fun, which I'd actually give it a 5-star rating. This is one of the rare few rides that left me smiling and laughing for minutes after experiencing the roller coaster. If you check back on our video there, you can see my direct reaction, especially to my first ride on the Legend. I was just hooting and hollering for a good 3 or 4 minutes after experiencing Legend. And that was in the daytime in front row. I can only tell you that nighttime back row gets even more insane in all ways, and I highly recommend at least getting one ride in the day and one ride at night. With that said though, we gotta go into my personal rating out of 10, and it is a perfect 10 out of 10. I'm sure some of you might be a little shocked by this, but this thing is just fantastic, and it gives me, at least personally, all the things I want in a roller coaster, especially for being over 2 decades old and built by Custom Coasters International. And I'll add in that having Knott's Berry Farm as my home park and Ghost Rider pretty much in my backyard, Legend feels like Ghost Rider 2.0. This time, instead of having an out and back layout just going in a bunch of straight sections over and over again, it's got a full twister layout on the side of a hill. That makes me love it even more. Speaking of loving it though, do you love it or do you not? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and of course while you're down there, check out all the links in the description, including some park polls that we need some help on ranking all of the roller coasters and rides at those given parks. So if you were to participate in those polls, I would really appreciate it. But with all that said, I wanted to say thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world. And stay tuned if you like this for more reviews at Kings Island, Kentucky Kingdom, and of course Holiday World in the very near future. But of course, until then, we'll see you on the next ride.